JFK Airport. Pre-dawn silence. In the dark of the cargo bay, a man counts to 60. Exactly how long it takes to pull off the biggest cash heist New York has ever seen. December 1978. Queens, New York. A cold wind cuts through the streets around JFK, but inside the backrooms of the airport, things are boiling. Not with heat, with tension. Meet Jimmy Burke. Sharp suit, calm eyes, always watching. Not a made man, but more respected than most who are. Irish, but trusted by the Italian mob. He's the kind of guy who never gets his hands dirty, but whose name whispers through half the city's underworld. Jimmy's been working the Lufthansa cargo terminal for years. He knows every face, every schedule, every blind spot. And now, he knows something else. A vault is about to be packed with millions in untraceable cash, fresh off flights from Germany. Not rumor. Not maybe. Solid. Over $6 million, sitting overnight in a box no bigger than a closet. But Jimmy never moves without precision. That's where Louis Werner comes in, a Lufthansa employee deep in gambling debt. The kind of guy who sweats too easily and talks too much, especially when his bookie's threatening to take his kneecaps. He owes the mob, and Jimmy's got the leverage. Jimmy doesn't need to be told twice. He starts building a crew. There's Tommy DeSimone, unpredictable, explosive, a ticking bomb in human form. Loyal to Jimmy, dangerous to everyone else. If Tommy's in, you know things will get loud if anything goes sideways. Angelo Sepe. Quiet muscle. Frank Burke, Jimmy's own son, driver, runner, no questions asked. Each man picked like a tool. Each man broken in just enough to do what's needed, and never flinch. They start meeting late. Warehouses, basements, back rooms of bars. No phones. No notes. Just eyes, hands, whispers. The plan is growing, but no one's calling it a heist yet. Not out loud. And outside, in the still December dark, JFK keeps humming. Planes land. Cargo moves. Security guards sip coffee and nod off for just a second too long. They have no idea what's coming. Jimmy Buck wasn't just planning a robbery. He was orchestrating a military operation, and everyone involved knew. One mistake, one wrong breath, and it's not just prison. It's a bullet in the head. Maybe from your own crew. The inside man, Louis Werner, had one job: details. He fed Jimmy the full layout of the terminal. When the guards changed shifts, where the alarm wires ran, which vaults had silent triggers, and most important, when the cash would arrive. Every month, Lufthansa shipped millions in US currency back from West Germany. Airline workers skimmed off bits for years, but this was all of it. Sealed, shrink-wrapped, untraceable. And Jimmy knew exactly which night it would land. He picked Monday, December 11th. Why? Fewer flights. Skeleton crew. Most cops already home for the night. Perfect. Then came the logistics. Jimmy brought in Parnell Stacks Edwards, a low-level associate who played guitar and ran errands. His job? Getaway car. Stolen van in, stolen car out. Dump the van and torch it. Fast and clean. That was it. The others had more direct tasks. A Tommy DeSimone and Angelo Sepe would enter the building, armed and masked. A Frank Burke would wait outside with the van, engine running. A Joe Manry and Paolo Licastri, both low-profile mob associates, would help control the hostages inside. The hardest part? Silence. They weren't there to kill. They were there to be ghosts. In and out in under 10 minutes. Jimmy gave one rule. No names. No mistakes. And if anyone opens their mouth, they disappear. They rehearsed it like theater. Who says what? Who moves where? How to force the night guard to open the vault without triggering the alarm. They timed it. Again and again. Jimmy even staged a dry run at a warehouse in Brooklyn. He watched. Took notes. Corrected movements like a director on set. This wasn't street crime. This was precision theft, backed by the mob, powered by fear, and executed with icy calm. The night before the job, Jimmy gathered the crew. No drinking. No women. No phones. No last-minute questions. Just one final sentence. Tomorrow we change our lives. Or we die trying. 3 a.m. December 11, 1978. The air around JFK was still. Planes grounded. Terminals quiet. Inside the Lufthansa cargo building, 6 employees worked the overnight shift. Tired, bored, unsuspecting. And then, headlights. A black Ford Econoline van rolled up to the loading dock. No markings. No sound. Out stepped 6 masked men in dark uniforms, shouting, "This is a hold-up." One held a clipboard, to look like security. Another had a silenced pistol, to make sure no one questioned it. Everything moved fast. 2 men secured the entrance. 2 more stormed inside. 1 stayed in the van, engine humming like a heartbeat. Within seconds, the crew rounded up every employee. No shots. No blood. Just zip ties, duct tape, and threats whispered through clenched jaws. They knew exactly where to go. Straight to the double-door vault, the one that held the German money. The key. Only the night supervisor had access. So they dragged him in. One of the robbers pressed a gun to his temple and said 5 words. "Open it. Or die here." The man opened it. Inside, stacks of US bills. Bundles upon bundles. Roughly $5 million in cash, and over $875,000 in jewelry and traveler's checks. They didn't celebrate. They didn't slow down. They moved like machines, bags filled, crates loaded, bodies watched. 6 minutes. That's how long it took. And then they were gone, into the van, down the service road, swallowed by the shadows of early morning Queens. Back at the terminal, it took nearly an hour before someone triggered the alarm. When police arrived, all they found was tape, broken locks, and a full staff bound and gagged, too scared to speak. No fingerprints. No camera footage. No witnesses who saw anything useful. It was perfect. Almost. Because one man forgot the rules. And it would bring the whole thing down. Parnell Stacks Edwards had one job. Drive the van to a scrapyard in New Jersey. Ditch it. Burn it. Walk away. But Stacks didn't show up the next morning. Instead, he parked the getaway van in front of his girlfriend's apartment, in plain sight, and got high. Passed out. Never made the drop. By the time Jimmy Burke found out, it was too late. NYPD had already towed the van. And inside? Fingerprints. Cigarette butts. Dog hairs. Evidence. Jimmy exploded. He knew how this would go. Cops would match prints, squeeze the weakest guy, and flip the case wide open. And Stacks? He was weak. Jimmy gave the order. Tommy DeSimone tracked Stacks down 3 days later, pulled him into a hallway, and shot him twice in the head. Problem solved. For now. But paranoia had already spread. Angelo Sepe started acting nervous. Joe Manry asked too many questions. Paolo Licastri was rumored to be talking to another crew. And then came the money. The heist had pulled in $6 million, the largest cash robbery in U.S. history at that point. But the crew saw almost nothing. Jimmy held the purse. He claimed the cash needed to be cleaned, laundered, hidden, moved. Some believed him. Some didn't. And then people started disappearing. A Joe Manry and Paolo Licastri, found dead in the trunk of a car, burned. A Angelo Sepe, shot multiple times. A others, vanished, no bodies, no clues. It wasn't just cleanup. It was control. Jimmy wasn't going to let anyone talk. And the more people vanished, the quieter the streets got. But outside that circle, someone was talking. A guy no one expected. A guy with nothing left to lose. His name was Henry Hill. A longtime associate. Close to Jimmy. Closer to Tommy. A guy who'd seen it all. The meetings, the planning, the aftershocks. But Henry had a problem. He couldn't stop using cocaine. Then more cocaine. Then paranoia. By 1980, the FBI had him cold. Drug charges, conspiracy, weapons. Decades behind bars. And Henry knew something else. If he went down, Jimmy would kill him. No question. No delay. So he flipped. He sat in front of federal agents and opened the floodgates. Names. Roles. The Lufthansa job. The van. The bodies. The cleanup. He gave them the whole thing. In brutal, careful detail. The feds couldn't believe their luck. They'd been chasing leads for 2 years. And now they had a map. Witnesses were dead. Evidence was thin. But Henry Hill's testimony was a sword. And Jimmy Burke was at the center of it. Jimmy was arrested in 1980. Not for the robbery itself. There was still no physical proof. But the drug trafficking? That stuck. So did witness tampering. Intimidation. Violence. The Lufthansa case technically remained unsolved. No one was ever officially charged for the robbery. But everyone connected to it either ended up dead, locked up, or running for their lives. The FBI launched Operation Lufthansa, digging into every mob crew in the area. Wiretaps. Raids. Bank records. The mob, once invisible at JFK, was now fully exposed. And Henry Hill? He went into witness protection. Got a new name. A new city. A second life. One he'd never earn back in the streets. Jimmy Burke stayed silent. Never confessed. Never cooperated. He died in prison in 1996, still denying it all. But the truth was out. Told not by lawmen, but by one of their own. By the time the dust settled, the $6 million was gone. Not in banks. Not in safes. Scattered into offshore accounts, buried in basements, blown on silence and blood. The Lufthansa heist became legend. Not just for the amount, but for the sheer chaos it unleashed. A blueprint of what happens when greed, loyalty, and fear collide at terminal velocity. Of the original crew, a Jimmy Burke died behind bars, serving 20 years for murder, not the robbery. A Tommy DeSimone? He disappeared in 1979. Never seen again. Rumor says the mob killed him for acting without permission. A Stax Edwards, Joe Manry, Paolo Licastri, Angelo Sepe, all dead within months. A Louis Werner, the inside man, was the only one convicted in connection to Lufthansa. He got 15 years. Served 10. And Henry Hill, the man who talked, lived out his years under fake names, constantly moving, watching his back until the day he died in 2012. What was left behind? Not wealth. Not respect. Just a story, so wild, so violent, so perfectly doomed, that it burned its way into pop culture. Scorsese turned it into Goodfellas. Hollywood sold the myth. But the streets? They remember the truth. Because in the end, it wasn't the guns, or the guards, or even the plan that killed the crew. It was what came after. The silence they couldn't keep. And the blood they couldn't wash off. And the money? Still missing.